So, first of all, welcome everybody for coming along. Tonight, as I said, we're hosting a Meet the Candidates forum. We extended invitations to all of the candidates for Redlands. We received a positive response from the four people we have here. If I can just introduce first of all our candidates. Deb Kelly on the end, who's representing the Australian Labor Party. Over here, welcome over. Matt Beecham from the welcome back. And Susan Bartlett from the political party represents. So why don't we start with David from the Greens? Would you like to start first, please, David? Microphone there, right in front of you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for taking the time out to attend this forum. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You can't? Okay, so it says the microphone is on, so how's that? That's better, okay, all right. I'd first of all like to start off by acknowledging the previous and current original owners of this land that we're gathered here tonight, and thank them for the opportunity of providing this facility for us all. This is the second time around for me. I stood in the 2012 state election for Redlands, and I remember we had a similar forum at that stage, and I was very much in an information gathering stage. And it's interesting to see over that period how things have progressed on the islands and how much things have stayed the same. My background is that, as you can tell, I'm a to and from, so I actually made the rational decision to come to Australia. I came to Australia with my wife, my lovely wife was sitting in the front row there, and the young family, because I saw Australia as a land of opportunity, and I still think it is a land of opportunity, particularly for bringing up children. Having come from the UK, you're virtually locked inside half the year, if not more. Although it's getting warmer over there, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I've worked in the development industry. I've worked in the not-for-profit and for-profit health sector. I've worked as a senior finance and general management executive, and I'm also in my latter stages of life worked as a consultant, healthcare, and then retirement villages. And I see a bit of parallel here with the age demographic on the Southern Moreton Bay Islands and retirement villages. And I think there's an opportunity there down the track, and I'll talk about that in response to questions later. My background as far as community is concerned, having a young family, I got involved in sport, I got involved in, I'm someone who sits on the byline, as my wife will tell you. So I ended up coaching a soccer team, I ended up managing a cricket team and doing all the things like umpiring and whatever. And as the kids grew up, I then moved into other issues. And back in the mid-90s, there was a proposal for a tollway through the Redlands and Logan area. It literally went through my property. And I hadn't really thought too much about things until that happened, and I examined the impact, and then I examined the project. Having a development background, I realised the project didn't make sense from a financial point of view, let alone from a traffic point of view. We were successful in stopping that development, but it sparked my interest in the environment and what we've got here in the beautiful Redlands and East Logan. And I've continued in that battle and trying to obtain better development outcomes without at the same stage saying you've got to stop, you can't do anything else. I'm not against development, all I am for is sensible development. I don't see this happening. I see more and more out of sequence type development. As a result, we're seeing a massive amount of traffic. You don't have to go anywhere in Brisbane today to understand that we've got a major problem. Even out of the peak hours, trying to get around the valley or trying to get around In the suburbs of Brisbane, there's traffic everywhere. And as we all know, as soon as there's a major problem or the weather issue, the whole thing becomes a nightmare. So I joined the Greens because I saw that political action was required to try and do something about what I saw as sustainable development. And as I said, I'll talk about that in response to my questions later. So thank you very much, and thanks for organising this forum tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, folks. Can you hear me? Am I holding in the right spot? Up here a bit closer? Is that better? Okay. Like an ice cream, apparently, eat it the same way. Deb Kelly's my name. I'm running for the Labour Party. The reason I joined the Labour Party is because I believe that that particular party shares the values that I have, which are about social inclusion of everyone in society, not just those in the elite classes. Why did I join the Labour Party, though? Well, I, for the last few years, worked as a barrister. My job is in criminal defence. I'm one of those courtroom advocates that wears the wig and the gown. I represent people from all walks of life when they're at their lowest in society's eyes, when they've been charged with criminal offences, or they're in family law situations and one partner or the other is trying to take the other one for everything they've got. And it's my job to try and get a better balance for people. In human resource management terms, I'm what's called a portfolio worker. I have had 4 careers over my 40-year working life. I'm 57. I started in hospitality management. My first 7 years was spent in tourism. My first degree is in tourism and hospitality management. My first thesis is in tourism in Queensland. From tourism and hospitality, I moved into teaching in tourism and hospitality. From teaching in tourism and hospitality, I moved into teaching teachers, and that was in the Queensland education system. I worked in the Queensland government for 10 years, starting in teaching. I did my teaching qualification in service with TAFE. I'm a fully qualified TAFE teacher. I've lectured in the university systems at Central Queensland University and also University of Queensland. From teaching teachers, I went into industrial policy. And I was charged with having carriage of the enterprise bargaining principle across the Queensland public sector. I was the poor fool who wrote the winning tender for that particular project, and it became my task to then actually action that project across the Queensland government. This was in 1989, 1990, 1991. Great project, rather like running for Parliament, with the same degree of difficulty, if you like. I said to the Director General at the time, we need to evaluate whether this is actually working. The Director General told me, no we don't, we're not really interested in that. So I spoke with one of my professors at the University of Queensland. He thought it would make a marvellous research project. So I did my PhD on the implementation of structural efficiency and enterprise bargaining in the Queensland public sector. What a topic! It's called Tango Walsall Funeral March. It's available for you if you want to read it. It's been digitised, it's in the Prior Library at UQ. It's a fairly interesting piece of Queensland history, if nothing else. From that I thought, we've got a PhD, now you ought to become an academic. So I tried that little track for a while. As an academic, it's not my field. It was a little bit ho-hum. Conferences were great, the international publications were fantastic, the travel was marvellous. But universities are being destroyed by our governments at the moment. It is not the same as it used to be, and it's going to get worse. And that was another reason to join the Labour Party. But throughout my career, everything I did was being touched by law. So I thought, maybe I'll get a law degree, with the intention of going back into consulting, which is where I was when I decided that I was going to do a law degree. So I've been doing management consulting for a few years. I did my law degree part-time, at the same time as lecturing at universities. And after I finished the law degree, I thought to myself, there's no point in getting a law degree if you don't actually go and get admission. So I thought, I'll go and get myself admitted. I went to work for 2 judges in the Queensland District Court, 2 years of associateship, right back down to the bottom of the pecking order. Made my way to the top of the pecking order because my judges said, don't go back to management consulting, don't go back to university, go to the private bar. So I went to the private bar, and that's where I still am, and it's a very pleasant place to be. It's actually much more fun than an election campaign. I didn't think I'd ever say that, because being in trial is a nightmare. And on February the 2nd, I'm in court in a trial. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on January the 31st. But that's my background, that's my history, and I'm here because Brandis and Blage both said, if you want to change anything, get into politics. So you can blame them for me being here. Thank you. Hello, can you hear me? Right close. Right close? Oh, right close. I'd like to thank you all for inviting me to come along tonight and giving me this opportunity to talk about myself and the Parliament United Party. I've lived in the Redlands for 39 years. I've worked for the Department of Justice for 14 years in magistrates' courts. I worked as a civil clerk at Cleveland and at Begley, and I was also the acting registrar of the Women Magistrates Court as well. I graduated from the University of New England at Armidale with a BA in Political Science. I also have a Diploma of Justice, and I've also been a Justice of the Peace. I studied numerous TAFE courses in Indigenous culture and cultural issues. The reason I chose to study politics is that I have a strong passion for helping people and for our environment. I found that politicians that once elected broke their promises and didn't resolve the issues that they were elected for. I'm a person that wants to change that. I want to be able to make things happen and do the right thing by people. The Parliament United Party's policies will benefit the whole of Queensland on a number of levels that will stimulate our economy. First priority is to stop the sale of or lease of assets. Stop coal seam gas until there is a safer solution. If they continue with the coal seam gas the way they are, it will absolutely ruin our agricultural years of agriculture, that we just won't be able to do it. It will poison the table waters, and you'll have no farming left or any grounds to grow your crops on. So that's something that has to be stopped. The other thing that they wanted to do as well is find a safer solution for that and provide better healthcare services and upgrade our hospitals, provide more doctors and nurses, and increase business incentives that will bring back consumer confidence and abolish payroll tax. This will also create employment, and as our motto is jobs, jobs, jobs. We need to stimulate the economy, and we need to do it now. My policies also are regarding upgrading roads. Mount Cotton Road is a death trap, and it's taken many lives over the years. Often when there's an accident, it is diverted through Victoria Point, which causes major congestion, which in turn impacts public transport's ability to stay on time. This also affects the Bay Island residents, because if you can't keep appointments, if you can't get out there to keep appointments, because of the traffic, then that's not so good. The other thing that I wanted to examine was our public transport system. Again, changes need to be implemented to cope with our growing population. This includes the island's transit services. I've seen many people left on the side of the road because the buses are full, and I think the same thing happens with your ferries. In an adequate service, makes you miss appointments, miss connections. This is only going to get worse as developments in Redland Bay, Mount Cotton and Thornlands continue. The huge housing developments is just going to impact our roads even more. The other thing that I feel passionate about is our childcare. Everybody needs to use this. The need for childcare needs to be restructured to create incentives for parents that work part-time and are not entitled to Centrelink reductions. Childcare facilities only charge a day rate, which highly disadvantages parents that work part-time. Also, when childcare facilities are closed for holidays, public holidays, parents should not have to pay the full day rate as they are penalised. I believe that the money should go back into the pocket of hard-working families and not into continual childcare. If your child's only there for half the day, why should you have to pay for a full day? I I've noticed with doing some research on the Bay Islands that these are classed as remote areas, and local businesses under the Department of United Policy would be eligible for tax reductions, which would enable opportunities for more businesses creating employment opportunities. One of the things that I noticed that the islands needed was with regards to having a day surgery. I was told that with hospital discharges, people would come home and there would be issues. Obviously, there needs to be a day clinic or a specialist visit where you haven't got to go to specialists on the mainland, especially like for the elderly people. This makes it really difficult when you're not well anyway and you've got to go and meet specialist appointments. I believe that there should be a specialist centre put here with a 10-bed capacity, and obviously with the option to expand this.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? My name is Matt McHeck and I'm your LNP candidate. My story with Redlands goes back to 1889 when my great-grandfather drove the first steam train to Cleveland, and we've been here ever since. I've got family on Macleay Island, and I've got friends on Carragara, and my best mate from growing up has got a block of land on Russell. And so sometimes when, infrequently, unfortunately, when we get together, I have my mate from Russell saying, build me a bloody bridge. My family from Macleay saying, don't build a bridge. And my friends from Carra will say, just keep us out of it, we don't want to know. So I've had an interesting insight into the islands. Now, I live in Queenslands and I spend a lot of time on the bay. I enjoy our Redlands environment immensely. I teach my daughter about fishing, crabbing, the environment. We go bushwalking at Venman Bushland National Park. So just probably a little bit more about me, about my background. I actually grew up mostly up at Maryborough and in a little fishing village not far from there called Maroon. And I don't know if any of you know Maroon, but it's a tiny little hamlet stuck in the mangroves in the middle of nowhere. And at low tide, you can just about walk to Fraser Island. You just got to get across 3 or 4 gutters that are filled with sharks. I grew up there. I went to Albert State School and went to Maryborough High. I did a bunch of different jobs as a high school kid. I washed dishes, I thrashed cane. I don't know if anyone knows what thrashing cane is, but it is possibly the worst job in the world. I worked on a trawler once. I did a tucker trip, and that wasn't much fun either. I got knocked overboard and hung on by my fingertips in the middle of the night, and I also did some kangaroo skinning on my school holidays. All of that, and I decided that I was going to do environmental science at uni, and those jobs didn't go down too well with my new colleagues at uni, so I kept that to myself. But I studied terrestrial and marine ecosystems and their management, and I did anthropology as well on the side. I got a couple of years through that, and I decided that I wanted to do something a bit different, so I went out to the Northern Territory and I worked out in Alice Springs, and I learnt how to teach people to ride motorcycles, and I became a licensing officer and motorcycle riding instructor. And then I came back home to Queensland, and I started my business here, the Motorcycle Riding School, in Cleveland in 1992. And that's where my real love affair with the Redlands started. And I lived in Capalaba, then Cleveland, and then moved around with the business just around southeast Queensland a bit, and then settled in Thornlands about 13 years ago. I'm really passionate about Redlands, and for me Redlands includes the islands. I love coming over here. I love spending time in mangroves. You might think that's a little bit weird, but I've actually been paid to work in mangroves by Central Queensland Uni, and thank you. So I'll probably wrap up here. I just wanted to say I'm motivated to get into politics primarily because of my daughter. She broke a leg on a trampoline at home, and I took her to Redlands Hospital in 2009. And when I got there were no beds, there were no stretchers, there was no opportunity to rest her and put her in a comfortable position. I had to sit in a chair like this for over 2 hours with my 4-year-old girl in my arms. And I knew that the reason for that was that Queensland Health was so hopelessly mismanaged that I was in this position, and so were a whole lot of other people. So I made it my mission in life to get rid of Labor, and I was a senior worker in the last state election, and that's what we did. And now I've got the opportunity to represent my home, and that's what I'm doing.